Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is LK, and today I'm talking to you about this phase in interior design that just probably doesn't get talked about enough. It's that phase in the design process where you feel like you're doing everything right, but everything just still feels kind of off. It's not that it looks bad, it's just that it's not you. And last week when I asked you guys to send in some questions, I started seeing these themes pop up over and over again. So instead of answering all of your questions back to back like a typical Q&A video, I grouped all of these questions into 5 main categories or themes of struggling with design. So these 5 themes or categories are what I'm calling the 5 things that are stopping you from creating a beautiful home. And what's really interesting is that even though these questions came from all different angles, they still tie back to these 5 main core issues. So even if you didn't submit a question, these are super common challenges that all homeowners and renters are dealing with, no matter their square footage, their budget, or their style. So as we get into this, I'll be answering my subscribers' questions as a way to dive deeper into these 5 separate areas. So let's get started. So no matter who you are, I'm most positive that you have struggled to trust your own decision making. But I think one of the biggest decisions that people really get stuck on is choosing color. This is such a universal problem, even if you're a professional designer. I just watched Joanna Gaines's new show, Mini Rennie, and I have a lot of thoughts about it, but she did have this first episode where she painted like 3 different rooms, this pale blue color, and then realized when it was dark and when it was overcast that the walls were looking like purple or gray. So she ended up having to just repaint everything and even mentioned, oh my God, must be what it's like for normal people who are just deciding to paint their walls on the weekend and then they live a week with it and realize that this is not right. So really it's just confirmation that color can be difficult. Everyone kind of knows if you get color wrong, it's usually not subtle. A perfect example of this is through a question that I was asked that says, I so want to add some cool design to my home and am hopeless with choosing color. I wish I could fly you here to Ohio to tell me what to do, LOL. That's honestly really nice of you to say, and I totally get it. You know, color theory is a science. I took classes on it and there's tons of books out there on it. My best advice here is to access some resources to get better acquainted with what colors go together and why. I think I remember Caroline Winkler talked about this website called coolers.co, and it's like an online web tool for designers to pick a color palette based on like, you know, whatever it suggests. And it's a really helpful and fun experience because sometimes you just want something else to do the legwork for you. But if you want something like a little bit less digital, you could pick up some books. Like I've found some on thriftbooks.com, like vintage color books, or I've told you about this a few times. It's the Japanese Dictionary of Color. So you can just get a better idea of what flows and what works. But if you want something easier or for free, just go to the hardware store and pick up some of those paint swatch cards and kind of mix them around to see what feels right. I think the best way to go about color, especially in your home, is to just go buy some paint samples at the hardware store. So if I go to my local Home Depot, they're $6 each and you can buy 5 of them. So that's $30 that you've invested into painting an entire room. I'd say that that's worth the money considering you're going to live with that color. You can paint each color on a piece of craft paper or cardboard and then just tape it up where you plan on having that color and then just walk past it for like a week. You know, experience it in different times of day, in different lighting, turn all the lamps on, turn one lamp on, put it next to your flooring and your furniture, and you're really going to start to see that certain colors look different even just at different times of day, let alone in different rooms. And this method works for not even just paint on the walls, it can also work for, you know, investing in a new sofa. So if you've really been thinking that a dark chocolate brown sofa might look amazing in your living room, but you're not sure because that seems like a really bold decision for you, you could like go to IKEA, for example, and purchase a dark brown throw blanket, put it over your sofa for a week and see how you feel, and then return the blanket if you really don't like it. I also got another question that's somewhat on the same theme. So this person says how to choose a paint color based on room, lighting, white and neutrals, so many to choose from. And yeah, white can be really difficult because everything that is white is actually kind of a derivative of a primary color, meaning that every white has an undertone. So if you look at all whites together, you're going to see some are more pink, some are more brown, some are more blue or green or even yellow. And these tones are going to show up even more depending on what you have around them. So what looks like pure white at Home Depot might actually be a purpley white in your bedroom. So it's really not about finding the perfect neutral or the perfect white. It's really about finding the best white for your space based based on your lighting, your flooring, and your decor. I think when people say, oh my God, I hate white walls, it's because they're probably using a bluish white when the majority of their furniture and decor and stuff is more warm toned. So a really great low tech tip is to just take a simple piece of printer paper and hold it up against your wall or your trim or your flooring. And then you can start to see how what you thought was white is actually maybe a little more yellow or more brown or more purpley. And if you start to see that happen, then congratulations, you found the undertone of your current paint or color or dresser or whatever. And this whole undertone thing is applicable to neutrals as well. And then I have one last question that kind of wraps up this section. So this person says, hi, is there a specific paint that you recommend for a kitchen island that is durable enough to withstand kitchen traffic? And yes, I always recommend a high quality cabinet and or trim paint. These paints are actually engineered differently than wall paints. So trim paints actually dry harder so that they can take a lot more scuffing and scrubbing. So imagine if you're scrubbing down a kitchen island, you don't want those layers of paint to just eventually come off. That's why you want to get a cabinet or trim paint. And I don't know the whole science about it, but you can absolutely talk to the paint department at like your local Lowe's or Home Depot and they will explain it to you, but it's a real thing. So I personally have used Benjamin Moore's advanced line, I think. And then also I think it's called Bear's Scuff Defense. And I used one or the other on my breakfast nook on the trim around the windows, as well as on the coffee bar. And it's really held up over time. I scrub the coffee bar a couple times a week and I have had literally no issues. But yeah, color can bring up so much uncertainty. And honestly, the best way through this process is to just experiment. And this applies to literally anything in your home. If you're feeling stuck on how to choose something, just choose something and then return it or paint over it. It's really so much fun if you really just don't overthink it. So this section takes us deep into that design process of where we feel like we're doing everything right and it's just not working. So often something we think we're doing right is purchasing items that feel like represent our style or the vision that we're going for, but it's like not coming together. It's feeling disorganized or cluttered or just generally not cohesive. One way to know if you need to start editing or getting rid of things is to look at all the decor pieces in your room and take note of their characteristics. Are they all shiny? Are they all the same scale and size? Are they all made out of the same wood tone? For example, if everything is really ornate and really big, then there's no contrast. It's just visual clutter at that point. What you really want is cohesive variation. So you want things that are grouped together by the same era or the same theme or the same structural kind of vision, but there needs to be variation amongst those items. So this is my big announcement that I feel like just matchy-matchy design is really boring and you need to find a way to mix it up, but also make it work together. So if your home is feeling off, it's probably feeling too matchy-matchy. There's not enough variation and you need to find a way to make varied pieces feel cohesive, whether it's from the era or the texture or whatever it may be. One of you guys summed this up so well. You said, how do you set boundaries when it comes to shopping? I see so many cool items and I get a ton of ideas, but how do I prevent my space from looking like a thrift store or worse, a storage unit full of potential? Do you purge your finds and have you ever regretting doing so? So there's a lot of questions in here, obviously, but I really want to talk about, shopping boundaries because yeah, this can kind of turn into an overconsumption thing. Personally, I really like to shop with a mission. So if I've already done the digital planning of what I might need in my room, and I'm thinking I really do need some shiny decor pieces in here, whether it's chrome or copper or something like that, and it's really going to finalize the design, I go out and I look for items like that. And let's say I'm still missing a clock or a lamp, I'm going to look for maybe a chrome clock or lamp. So sometimes I just want to go browse because I'm feeling completely creatively blocked, or I'm honestly bored with my ideas. So I'll go out to my favorite shops like the antique malls, the flea markets, and some of the thrift stores, or I'll even go online and just search through Google to see what's available brand new. But all in all, I feel like I'm using this process as kind of a real life Pinterest board. I think Pinterest algorithmically just kind of gets you sucked into this like spiral of the same old thing over and over again. So exposing myself to stuff that's a little bit different is really helpful, especially when it's like tactile. I can look at it and get a sense of the texture and the scale. But even then, if I find something cool in that process that I was not expecting to come across, I don't just take it home because it's cool. I really try to ask myself, can I use this for a future project or a current project that I'm on, and or is it going to work like for a future YouTube video, honestly? I also wonder, would it work for a friend's place? Sometimes I'm talking to a friend about maybe like redoing their front porch or something, and I see a really interesting plant stand. But most importantly, I always have to ask myself, if I'm bringing this home, do I actually have room for it? And if I don't have space space or really a clear spot for it, I definitely walk away from it, which I know can be so hard when you're shopping secondhand because you're like, there's only one of these things. It's not being mass produced, but I promise you something just as good or even better will come along in the future when you actually need that thing. But to be realistic, there are those times where I'm like, I can't stop thinking about that thing. It's so good. And I do end up getting it. And if I don't have a space for it, I will give myself literally 6 months to keep it and see if I can find a spot for it or find a purpose for it. And if I don't, I will absolutely like resell it on Facebook Marketplace, or I will give it to a friend so I can see it in their house, or I'll just donate it back to the store or something. But this is why I love things like cabinets and bookcases and shelves, because you could really house your ideas and even put them on display to experiment with them to see how you really feel about it. But once those things are full, you really have to be ruthless and start decluttering. So there's really definitive rules here. If I don't have enough space on my bookshelf anymore, or I've run out of time and we're at the end of the 6 months, I just have to move on. But to answer your question about whether I regret letting things go, I think it's pretty rare. The one thing I can think of off the top of my head is back in the patio here, I had that one IKEA chair from my LA house. And I had mentioned that I found 2 of the same chairs in LA on the street for free. And I had to sell one of them back at my apartment because it was just too small for 2 chairs. And I was like, dang, I really wish I would have had those 2 chairs for this house. But I was at the as is section at IKEA and that chair popped up, and it wasn't the white version that I had, but I just spray painted it white. So yeah, I think that's like a perfect example of how you can maybe like regret a little bit letting go of something, but then that chair just came back into my life. But honestly, you know, I really believe that if you let go of something, something better will come back if you really do need it. And then my last question that is somewhat relevant to this category is favorite places to thrift. And I would just say that I rarely find good stuff at the thrift store. I have to go so often to find good things. But my favorite places to go are really, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, garage sales or estate sales. As you guys know, I think those are the best places to find things. And if you're talking about finding cohesive variation, definitely an estate sale. You know, you're finding someone's home that's already been decorated for however many decades. And so they've got a lot of items that are working together that might be different. And you might be able to find a bunch of different pieces that really can help make your room come together. So if you kind of follow these mindsets, then I doubt that your home will end up looking like a storage unit of potential or a thrift store. Is this thing taking up space, or is it adding something to my space? So this one's all about your space feeling just completely off and you really don't know what to do about it. Like you feel like you can't change the weird layout or the ugly cabinets or the appliances, and maybe you can't renovate, or you just feel like your space is feeling cluttered. One of you guys said, any suggestion on how to zhuzh up old renter appliances like a fridge? I've seen hacks like changing out the handle or peel and stick wallpaper, but I want to know your thoughts. And then another person said, how to fix wood kitchen cabinets in a rental that are super beat up. They're shaker style, so you can't really use vinyl wrap. And I guess here is my take. These types of upgrades are always going to be so specific to your exact space, your budget, your style, and your skill level. You can absolutely always save up money and better your skills by trying new things. You can absolutely vinyl wrap the fridge and put a new handle on there. I saw Handyman Graham from Alexandra Gator's team do that, and it looked amazing. I also saw Lone Fox take that piece of copper and put it on his dishwasher. And although those are very fantastic options, you can also like work with what you have. I think the best creativity comes from asking yourself, how can I complement the space that's already here? I'm absolutely not against covering things up or using peel and stick, but as you asked my advice and kind of what are my thoughts, this is really how I approach all my room makeovers. I really do have to believe that it's probably not the ugly appliance in your kitchen that's making you hate it. It's probably because the lighting needs to be updated, the wall paint needs to be retouched up, maybe you need to change out the window treatments, organization, and decluttering. You could clean things. All of those things together can massively shift the look and feel and vibe of a kitchen. I think a really great reference for this, if you're looking for some inspiration of how to work with a space that doesn't really go with your vision and style, is to watch my primary bathroom makeover video. And I'm being completely honest here because I have a room that is completely covered in a really bright pink and black tile. And I could have covered all of it up in peel and stick wallpaper or tile or something, but why not just live with the tile and try to work around it and be creative and make it work for me? A lot of people mentioned I should put a frame around the mirror, but the mirror is so huge. At what point am I just adding things to add things into the room? I really want everything I add in there to be for a reason. So we're trying to find things to make what I have work without going over the top. I really just wanted to focus on what I could change in that room. So I re-grouted the tub because it was gross. I changed out the window treatment because it was boring. I added knobs to the vanity so that it would feel cohesive with the rest of the home. And I also updated the medicine cabinet because it just felt too modern. And if vinyl wrap is not going to work for your shaker style cabinets and you don't want to kind of do a whole DIY around it, then I would just suggest either repainting it with the same color that it already is, just to give it a fresh coat if it's like white or something. But if they are natural wood cabinets, I would 100% sand them down and restain them. And if you don't want to do that, you can always use some of the easier tricks like Restore a Finish or Tibet almond sticks or Howard's Feed and Wax to just like liven up the cabinet itself and kind of disguise a lot of the scratching. I have so many different videos that talk about ways to like revamp items, so I'll link that stuff in the description below as well. The medicine cabinet in the bathroom had a shaker style type door, and instead of covering it in vinyl wrap, I just painted the whole thing, and then I filled in that little gap with some pole wrap and some wood trim. So I don't know if that's what you want to do, but you can go check out how I did that to see if that gives you any ideas. If I had pictures of your home, for example, I could reference them and give you exact details. I am working on part 4 of Living Like LK, so if you want to go check out that link as well, you can submit actual pictures of your room and tell me exactly what you're looking for, and I will give you some advice in a future video. But my overarching advice here is to just lean into what you have and then build around that. I think that's been the through line of my entire channel here. It's not always about doing more. Sometimes you just need a simple reset. So this one's for all of you multi-passionate people who are super creative and you collect a lot of things and you just kind of don't know what to do with those things. You're like, I know this is a really cool bookshelf or this is a really awesome lamp, but I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to incorporate it and make it part of a bigger style. I think a lot of us assume that if we were really talented or really creative, then we would know what to do with these things. But creativity is literally the opposite of that, honestly. It's not about always having a plan and executing that and then being done. A lot of creativity is done through experimentation and failure. Literally anyone who's talented at design or DIY or whatever it is has done it 1,000 different ways on 1,000 different days and has failed probably 999 times. Like, it's just a process that you have to go through in order to learn and experiment and grow. You might just not be trusting your instincts yet, or maybe you're just judging your ideas before they even go anywhere. One of the biggest shifts for me was just realizing that I just need to start, even if I don't know where it's going yet, even if it doesn't align with maybe what the people I admire would choose to do. Maybe they wouldn't do this, but would I? That's honestly the more important question. One of you guys asked, what time of day do you work on projects? And it's usually during the day when I have some kind of natural lighting and some energy to do it, but that's not always the case. I just know that creativity needs like space to live and breathe. It is so hard to feel creative and execute on things if you're feeling really rushed or burnt out, which is honestly why it's really hard to put out videos every single week, especially since documenting my thoughts and my process at the same time is still like a new process for me. I usually just do this like on my own time. So it's really been difficult, but it's been a fun challenge as well. So if you're feeling just a little bit blocked and you don't know when to start doing projects, then I would just dedicate a time on your calendar to say like, Thursdays at 4 p.m. is when I start working on projects. I think your instincts just get a lot sharper when you just allow yourself to try things over and over and over again. And then lastly, someone else asked, how did you learn how to use power tools? And honestly, this is just from my own curiosity. My brother is younger than me, and also I didn't really have a relationship with my dad, and he wasn't really a power tools guy anyways. And even as a kid, I wanted to use power tools. Like, I imagined making like a soapbox car or like building a lemonade stand, but I had literally no idea, and I kind of wasn't given that opportunity. So the minute I had money and time and some adult freedom, I absolutely just pursued it because it was interesting to me. And so I watched YouTube videos, or I've shared with you guys that I've been on Skillshare for years. I've used Craftsy. I've done so many different things. I've talked to the guys at Home Depot, and even lately I've been talking to my brother-in-law Dalton, who is such a great woodworker and has so many tools. So he's been a really great resource, but I've just been unafraid to ask people questions, honestly. And because I didn't always really know what I was doing, I just purchased tools secondhand, and it's not that much more expensive to buy it new, but it just made me feel a little bit more comfortable spending, a little bit less money on something that I didn't exactly know how to use. So that could be an option for you if you're kind of hesitating on it. But no matter what it is, it's all learnable. You don't have to be handy or trained in design. It's all just a practice of curiosity and experimentation and allowing yourself to just be who you are. So this one's for all of you who are just really afraid of not getting it right and not wanting to waste money or time, and or maybe you're just really waiting for the right time to start. One of you asked, what's your least favorite part about redoing a space that you feel least confident to tackle? And I think it's just that moment, like right before I start. I feel like I'm just kind of walking into the literal and proverbial unknown, and I'm not sure if I have what it takes. Once I get into it, it's like so much easier. If you're feeling like I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, that's the exact time to just start doing it and not care if it's right or wrong. If you cannot get over that initial hump, it will not happen. It's just as simple as that. I also really struggle with like the planning of these types of projects that I'm least familiar with, because I don't have that track record of evidence that I know what I'm planning is going to work. And so it just makes me feel really, doubtful and insecure that it's going to happen. I just personally try to remind myself of three main things, which is dream huge, dream very big, and then do all the research as much as you can within a certain time frame. Don't get stuck there. Don't just do the research, and then just be patient, just keep going and try and fail and try and fail. And I always have that moment of freezing up or doubting myself or losing my inspiration or passion for something. And to be completely honest, that never goes away. I've been a creative person, a hobbyist and professionally for so many years now, and it just never goes away. You just always feel that. But I think what just gets easier is that you just keep doing it, and it feels a little bit less intense every time. But even if it's only like a millimeter difference, you're just gaining more confidence as time passes. I think a lot of us are either waiting for permission to start, or permission to try, or permission to screw up, or permission to make a change and do something that maybe nobody else has seen before. But you're the only person that needs to give you that permission, honestly. Someone else asked, have you thought about doing in-person makeovers for local subscribers? Which is a really sweet question, and yes. I'm not 100% sure about it, as it's quite an undertaking to like transfer a ton of decor and like DIY materials to somebody else's place. Honestly, it's definitely something I've considered, and I'll let you know if that ever becomes a thing. I really do love making those subscriber videos though, where you guys send in your photos and then I kind of give you an idea of what I would do if I was in that space. I just think it's really fun to show people what they're allowed to do. Like, let's take budget and reality out of the question and just really get a big idea of what we could potentially do in here. And by watching other people's rooms get transformed in that way, sometimes you might think, hey, I could do that as well. Like, that might be applicable to my bedroom or my living room. And I think that whole process can really help people feel unstuck, So if this all just sounds like you, then you should just pick one thing that sounds even remotely doable and start with that. Move one piece of furniture or go buy those paint samples and just take notice of how it feels. You don't need to have it all planned out or all perfect. You just need to get started and get going. But I really just wanted to say thank you guys for showing up every week and hanging out. I really wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without your support. So I really appreciate it. And I love doing this, and I think this is really fun, and I hope you're getting something out of it. And I will definitely be talking to you guys on Instagram or on the post tab here on YouTube. And that's about it. So I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and have a good week. Bye.